Sydney Swans and the GWS Giants have just finished a pre-season hit-out. One of the more enjoyable games for me to watch so far in this pre-season. I think both teams were pretty close to full strength, and we got to see what, I guess, tie up some of those narratives from the pre-season that we were sort of expecting or anticipating from this game. Sydney, of course, have had the big coaching change with John Longmire walking out the door, so we wanted to see some of the rumours, if they were true, about different players playing in different positions. So we got to see some of that. And for the Giants, a little bit of upheaval there with, three of their probably key starting players out of the lineup, with James Peatling, Isaac Cumming and Nick Haynes all going out the door, which means there's definitely opportunity for some young players, some draftees or some new recruits to step in. So they were probably the main takeaways and probably the lens of which I watched the game through. As far as the notable absentees, I said that they were at full strength, but there were still some big players out of the game for the Giants. Sam Taylor, that key defensive position, so that's obviously a big one. Jake Stringer, the new recruit, didn't play in the forward half of the ground. Tom Green, probably their best midfielder, and then Stephen Cornelio, who I'm not sure what's actually happening with him, if he's just being managed, but a veteran player that's been left out of the side there. For Sydney, it was Logan McDonald, it was Jake Lloyd, Tom Papley, Callum Mills and Hayden McLean. So probably didn't have as big a names out of the team, and particularly with Logan McDonald and Hayden McLean, I'm sort of interested there to see how that actually looks with the forward line, because obviously we saw Amadi sort of lead the line. They've got McCartan, who they've sort of pushed into the forward half of the ground as well. So we'll go through all of that in this video. To start off, as far as game plans are concerned, I think it's probably more intriguing around the Sydney Swans with Dean Cox coming in. I think the Giants sort of play the way that they want to play. They want to get the ball, open up the field and get it in really quickly to those dynamic small forwards. And we saw that again. And although they lost the game by 51 points, that's kind of insignificant. They did show signs of that, and they got to blood some new exciting players at the same time. The Swans definitely, they like to control the football a little bit more. They do have different modes that they go through, and they certainly attack the corridor, and they definitely look to be attacking the corridor as much as they possibly could, getting the ball into the hands of players like Nick Blakey and Errol Goulden particularly. I don't think those two players are going to be allowed the freedom in a regular season game that they were allowed today. Goulden sort of carved up the Giants at times on transition. So that was sort of interesting, and I think we'll need a little bit more time to properly dissect Dean Cox's game style, but he did swing some changes. I'll sort of go through the lines here of the Sydney team just to sort of, talk through what changes could occur, and we'll try to sort of predict the best 23 as we're sort of going through this. But the midfield, absolutely no surprises there. I thought maybe they would have had a little bit of a look at some different players through there, but it was pretty much Heaney, Warner and Rowbottom. Much of what we saw last year with those two sort of really dynamic attacking mids in Heaney and Warner, with Rowbottom just sitting at the base of midfield and sort of occupying the opposition's best player. You had Sheldrick go through there, who's probably an interesting one for the Swans this season. Can he kind of break into the team? For me, Sheldrick sort of looks like one of those players that if he doesn't play in the midfield, it's a bit difficult to find a spot for him. And with the strength that the Swans have there with Heaney and Warner and Rowbottom and those types, it is difficult to see where he fits in. You look at a player, someone like Taylor Adams, that kind of takes up the same position. Maybe Sheldrick is a player that could walk into his spot. He also played today, and he's another one that played pretty well today. So could they sort of, age Taylor Adams out of the side, bring in a Sheldrick just to refresh things a little bit? That's going to be, I almost think Sheldrick and Taylor Adams are probably fighting for the same position there. So that's an interesting watch. From the wings, you obviously had Gould, and he's just an absolute cheat code on the wing. If he gets the ball anywhere forward of centre, he is going to carve you up. He's so surgical by foot, and he was fantastic today. I think he had 32 disposals, and it's just, such a weapon, whether he's kicking the ball inside 50 or he's just progressing you up the field coming out of defence. So he was awesome. Caleb Mitchell, who's a young player, I think he played a couple of games last year, Caleb Mitchell. He was occupying one of the wings at different times, but as was James Jordan. So he's another one that at times under John Longmire played as like a defensive midfielder, similar to what Rowbottom does, and he played sort of more aggressive tags on opposition players. He looked to be playing more of a wing role, but of course you're not really unleashing any tags in a preseason game, so he might play a little bit inside and a little bit at half forward too. As far as the defence goes, and particularly the key position players for Sydney, I think there are some spots up for grabs here. Tom McCartan has been pushed forward. So you sort of had the main key position defenders today as Lewis Melican Aaron Francis, Nick Blakey, and Ben Patton, who I think might be an SSP that's come up from St Kilda. I'm not sure if he's on the primary list at the moment. I will have to chase that one up. But Melican looked pretty good, was sort of occupying Hogan for quite a lot of the game. Francis was sort of taking the second tall in Riccardi there. And then you had Blakey just doing what he's doing. And he's more of an offensive threat more than anything else. But you do sort of look at the key position players there for Sydney. Is that really a good enough line with Melican, Francis, Blakey, and potentially Patton as another option? You've got Rampy there as sort of that medium type, but he tends to play on more of a hybridy small type player. And then Florent, Wicks, and Roberts were sort of running the ball out of defence. So when you read the names all together, Melican, Francis, Blakey, Rampy, Florent, Wicks, and Roberts, like it doesn't sound as talented as what I remember at times thinking the Sydney entire team was last season. So I do feel like they need to inject a little bit more key position talent into this team, even though I know they do have a lot of bodies going through there. As far as the forward line goes, as I said, McCartan was down there as a focal point. Now, he didn't kick a lot of goals. In fact, I'm not sure if he actually hit the scoreboard at all, Tom McCartan, but I do feel he's going to be a little bit more of a decoy player alongside Amati. So you're going to see Amati being the one that really gets on the end of stuff, and they try to open it up for him a little bit more. And I really do think this could spell the end for either one of McDonald or McLean as those other two big forwards. I don't think they're going to play all of those guys in the one side, and they're going to look to those hybrids, players like Will Hayward, who is just a little bit more dangerous and can play at ground level, and he's a more difficult matchup for the opposition. So you sort of had in this game McCartan, Amati, Hayward. Of course, Amati was really dynamic and looks like he could take that next step. And I do think he is the most talented of those key position forwards. Justin McInerney was down there as a little bit of an awkward matchup as well. And Braden Campbell, he's one that definitely could be taking his game to the next level. I always thought in my head that he'd eventually go down to halfback, but he did look really dangerous as kind of a medium forward today, whether he was on the lead or he was just sort of impacting at ground level. I thought his contest work was really strong and just looked dangerous down there. And Thomas Hanley, now I talked about just before with Sheldrick and Taylor Adams sort of fighting it out for that sort of midfield depth spot / forward spot. I think Thomas Hanley really could be in the mix here. So I'd put him down, pencil him down as a bit of a watch for this preseason, but he's someone that I watched last season. He was picked up in the mid-season draft in 2024, and he impacted really strongly from a midfield perspective and a half forward perspective for the Gippsland Power. Got taken by the Swans in that mid-season draft, and he looked really, really good today. He plays that high half forward role really, really cleverly. He's a good runner. And again, just his ground level contest work is really good, and he's just seems to be able to find a pass inside forward 50. So I like Thomas Hanley there. He is a watch. We'll move on to the Giants. That was sort of a quick breakdown of all of the Swans lines. Now, the midfield for the Giants is interesting with Tom Green's injury. So I think at full strength, they're going to be going with Tom Green, they're going to be going with Finn Callahan, and they're going to be going with Toby Bedford as the midfield three. Kelly was in there quite a lot today, Kelly was in there, but I do see him occupying either a wing or a half forward in the long term. The other players that went through there that are sort of vying for that spot at the moment, Toby McMullen probably spent the most amount of time in there. Harry Rouston had a bit of a go in the second half, as did James Leake in the second half. And the one for me that probably looks like the most natural replacement for Green, if they just go a like for like, horses for courses, is probably James Leake. So I'll be really interested to see what they do with that. But I suppose the fact that they started with Kelly in there, it probably looks more like Adam Kingsley is looking to sort of shuffle players around to cover Green, still keep that experience, the likes of Josh Kelly and Callum Ward and those sorts of players running through the team rather than bringing a James Leake in. He came in the second half. Maybe if he impresses enough in the rest of the preseason, he will get a spot, but jury's still out on that at this stage. I would like to see James Leake get a go in there. His versatility and his size looks really strong and a natural replacement for someone like a Tom Green. The big one that just really, really impressed today was Cody Angove. And I think we can almost from this performance, I think we can say that he is getting close to a lock for one of those wing positions for the Giants. He's a real specialist winger, this guy. The way that he runs, he covers the ground, he links up, and he helps move the ball from defensive 50. A nice little partnership could come between he and Lockie Whitfield and James Ash, who we're going to talk about. Sorry, Lockie Ash, James A. I'm thinking of James Ash. So yeah, nice partnership there. And Angove kicked the 2 goals. I think they were both from 50-metre penalties, but some of his chase down work, his defensive pressure in the forward 50 was really good. And he was just getting to a lot of contests just to be that, sitting outside the contest, receiving handballs and just helping them get up the field. So really liked what he did. He was one that went under the radar last year in the under-18 championships from WA. He was hiding a little bit and the Giants swooped in and took him end of the first round. Callum Ward did play across the wing as well, as did Xavier O'Halloran. So whether Callum Ward gets in, I could probably see him with Green being out of the team being a little bit more of an inside player to cover Green. He could play a little bit off the half forward line as well, but maybe he's a bench option or someone that can play a little bit as the sub as well long term. But I could see Callum Ward this season, if everyone's fit for the Giants, getting pushed out. Moving to the forward line where some of those players could push Callum Ward out. Jesse Hogan, he kind of speaks for himself. I mean, did he have a massive game today? Not really, but he's such a target and he's such a weapon for the Giants just to be able to put the ball in deep to the top of the square. You know that he's going to take more inside 50 marks than any other key position forward. Riccardi's good as that second foil. Aaron Cadman, I think he had a pretty good game. He took a couple of really nice contested marks and he looms as that Jeremy Cameron type of forward that roams the field, gets the contests, and then turns his opponent and sort of works as a small closer to goal. But I just want a little bit more from him. I just haven't quite seen everything that I want. And I think if he's up and running and takes his game to a new level, the Giants will be pushing for that top 4 and ultimately a premiership, what they're going for this season. They're one of the teams that I have as a big mover this season. Now, for the Smalls, they've just got so many options in this area. There's a lot of guys vying for a round 1 spot here. Ultimately, do I think any of them are actually going to get it? Well, I'll tell you at the end of the video, but Toby Green's got to go through there. Brent Daniels has got to go through there. Darcy Jones was absolutely amazing today. Just the step on this guy, the way that he's able to receive the ball out in those pockets on the wing. He's able to receive it running away from goal and then turn his opponent back inside and then hit up a pass just at the base of 50. I think it's so deadly. And with all of this modular forward line that the Giants are running, I think he's going to be a weapon this season as a high half forward. Phoenix Gothard started the game in there, which is a good sign for his progression. Harvey Thomas was really good again. So I'd imagine that Thomas and Gothard are probably fighting it out for one of those spots. I'd say Darcy Jones is a lock. And Ollie Hannaford was another one that came on in the second half and just didn't really get enough time to kind of show himself in this game. He's another really dynamic pressure forward option that I'm sure will get in there in the long term, but perhaps not the short term. And then the defense, obviously missing that gun in Sam Taylor. Buckley was there. Leakalia took a couple of really nice intercept marks and sort of peeled off, and a real good sign for the Giants in the defensive stocks. Himmelberg and Iden, given the fact that they have lost Isaac Cumming, who did play as more of a wing in the 2024 season, but Himmelberg probably needs to be a player that moves the ball out of defence as well for the Giants this season. And then you've got those big premier ball movers, Lockie Whitfield, Lockie Ash. Jacob Ware played really well today. And the other one vying for one of those positions is probably Connor Stone, another one that looks like a really versatile sort of medium type. And I think he did pretty well today and he started the game for the Giants. So he's obviously in the conversation for one of those round 1 spots, but will he be able to overtake someone like a Jacob Ware who's played a little bit more football? I think that is the question. So my predictions for the Giants side, I'll kind of talk this through my perception of it and then I guess what Adam Kingsley kind of told us with the squad selection. So Angove, I'm locking him in. I'm locking him in for one of those wing spots. I think he was absolutely fantastic and offers the Giants something that they don't currently have in those wing roles. When you talk about players like Callum Ward, who's not really a specialist winger, O'Halloran does what he does, but I think Angove with the run that he provides is just a little bit of an upgrade there. James Leake, I'd love to see him get that Tom Green spot, but I just don't think, if there's no more injuries to key midfielders, I just don't think James Leake gets in at the moment, although he is a chance for something like a sub or, a round 2 spot if something comes up. Phoenix Gothard, I don't think he's going to get in over Harvey Thomas at this stage or Darcy Jones as the other one. So Phoenix Gothard misses out. And Connor Stone is the other one who I think Adam Kingsley is kind of telling us here with Connor Stone that he potentially could go into one of those halfback spots. And given the fact that he is such a versatile player, I think he could be on the interchange for the round 1 side. So essentially for me, I think it's Connor Stone and I think it's Cody Angove that get into this side. One as a winger and one as sort of that distributing halfback medium type defender as well. Changes at the Swans. I talked about Braden Campbell's emergence as a forward, but Thomas Hanley for me, I'm not locking it in as a round one starting pick here, but Thomas Hanley looked really comfortable at half forward, and I think he could be, fighting it out with someone like a Taylor Adams or an Angus Sheldrick as well. So Thomas Hanley, watch out. And I do expect the Swans just overall, holistically, to play less tools in that forward half of the ground, which opens up places for someone like a Thomas Hanley. As I've said in all these videos, I will do a best 23 for both of these teams at some point before the beginning of the season to kind of eke it out a little bit more. But that's my main takeaways from Sydney versus GWS in the preseason.